Well, hello and welcome to 2025. I hope this year is off to a good start for you. If you're watching this channel, then my guess is that you're someone who loves Rocky Mountain National Park. And if that's the case, you're in for a treat. As in this video, I want to share some of my favorite photos and experiences from this past year in the park. This was my 21st year in Rocky Mountain National Park, my 20th as a professional nature photographer. So I've been doing this for quite a long time. And over these years, I've gotten to know the park extremely well. There are very few places that I haven't been. However, I'm still finding new views and even a few little areas that I'd not fully explored. With 415 square miles, there'll probably always be little pockets of this stunning park that I've overlooked, but I'm going to try and find them all. Now, during 2024, I hiked and skied about 700 miles through the park. It was far short of my goal for the year, but I'm still grateful for every chance I've had to be in the mountains. Now, people often think that because I'm a professional nature photographer, that I spend all of my time out in the natural world. But unfortunately, the reality is that at least 80% of my time is spent in the office. I spend it running the business, doing correspondence, handling finances, preparing prints, working on scripts, editing videos, writing books, etc., etc., etc. But I do manage to get out in the park, and every time I do, I love it. Now, I don't know if many of you are as crazy as I am, but I track all of my outings in Rocky on a spreadsheet. I also get a new park map from the entrance station each year, put the date on the top, and then I mark everywhere I go using a different color for hiking and a different color for skiing. It's fun to be able to look back and to see what I've done and to see what I haven't done recently so that I can focus on those areas next year. Now, those of you who've watched my video, Discovering Autumn's Hidden Gift, know that I struggle to let go of autumn each year. However, once the snow is a couple of feet deep, then I really start to get excited. There is just so much beauty to be found in the winter in Rocky Mountain National Park. But you've got to have some snow for it to really come out. Now, last winter, our snowpack was pretty good, and so I managed to get out quite a bit. In the winter, as usual, I'm up pretty early, and a couple of days a week, I'll work for about 6 or 8 hours in the office, and then I'll head up into the mountains. I mostly ski on Flat Top Mountain, and last winter I managed to get up above tree line on Flat Top at least 20 times. I don't know, it just brings me so much joy to be out there floating on the snow, and I guess it also helps me to keep in shape. Most of the time there isn't a lot to photograph out there on a winter afternoon, but just being out does me so much good. Some days I was able to enjoy wonderful fluffy powder, and other times there were howling winds or storms that swallowed up the mountain, reducing my visibility to almost nothing. Yet each time I went out in the mountains to ski, I came home refreshed. It's probably my favorite thing to do. I also use my skis to get to lots of other places in the park during the winter season. I remember one February morning last year, I skied up to the Ypsilon Lake area for sunrise. I'd been waiting for a couple of years for the perfect conditions for some photos that I wanted to make up there, but I needed a thick blanket of fresh snow, clear skies to the east, and no wind. Now, that sounds simple, but it doesn't happen that often. Usually we get a fresh snow and then the winds pick up immediately afterwards. But when I saw that we were going to get those conditions, I headed out dark and early and skied up there to near Ypsilon Lake. But when I arrived, it was nearly 20 degrees below zero, so I couldn't wait around too long. The views were stunning, and I made a few photos. Unfortunately, they weren't quite as good as I had hoped. I guess I also needed clouds over the mountains. Nonetheless, I had such a delightful time up there, seeing those views and enjoying the silence of that place, that I skied back with a big smile on my face probably the entire way. It's just so special to be out there. I guess it must be my Norwegian heritage, but I love being in the snow and out on my skis. The stresses of life just seem to drop away when I do that. As the snow began to melt in late April, I turned to photographing small scenes. First the ice melting on the lakes with their beautiful abstract forms. I then started watching for the arrival of the first flowers. These are the pasque flowers, which typically bloom under the ponderosa trees long before it's warm enough for other flowers to dare to come out of hiding. Then a little later I turned to the aspen trees as they put out their vibrant green leaves. At this time of year, the whole park seems to be coming to life. Soon there seem to be flowers appearing all over in the lower parts of the park. As the spring transitioned into summer, then I followed the melting snow back into the park to photograph jagged peaks, rushing streams, and the arrival of summer. Now, every year I try and target a few different backcountry areas that I really want to photograph. One of these locations has been an area of focus for many years, but the weather has never cooperated. There are either no clouds, too many clouds, high winds, or something else that keep me from getting a decent photo. So this year I hiked into this remote valley in time for sunrise, and this time, despite the weather forecast, the conditions were absolutely perfect. I was so excited to finally be able to have a few photos that show the beauty of this little visited area of the park. It's times like these, when everything finally comes together, that I feel like it's worth all of the effort I put in. Now, some of you may remember the video I put out about Trail Ridge Road. I filmed that over several days, but the main portion was filmed on July 3rd. And while I was filming, I was caught in a snowstorm. It dropped about a half inch of snow in about 20 minutes. It was so fun to see the tundra covered in a blanket of snow in July with wildflowers poking through. Then, just a few hours later, it was back to summer. Then the next day, the 4th of July, I hiked up to the top of the Never Summer Mountains to photograph at sunrise. You may remember my video from that outing. This was another one of those amazing days to be out, even though I didn't have the clouds I was counting on for my photography. The temperature when I arrived at sunrise was about freezing, but there was very little wind. I enjoyed spending the 4th of July hiking from peak to peak, sometimes over snowfields. I didn't see another person the entire day. But one of the things that the video didn't show was how completely exhausted I was. I had misjudged the distance to get to the summit by 2 miles, and so I had to almost run up the mountain with my 40-pound pack to try and get to the top for sunrise. Because I put out so much energy, I was then really dragging for the rest of the 19-mile hike. But it was one of my favorite days out this summer. This last summer, I photographed many cool places. From still frozen alpine lakes to high mountain meadows and star-filled skies. I made videos of a couple of these outings, but probably my most memorable outing was with my son and with a friend of mine. While photographing one morning, I came across a very old wheel that looked like it had broken off of an old camping trailer. It was rusting in the mud down in Forest Canyon, and it still had an old tire on it. So the three of us hiked down, pulled out the old wheel out of the mud, and then rolled it up and out of the canyon. It was hard work, and we had to take turns pushing it, but it felt so good to remove such a big piece of junk from the national park. However, the most incredible thing about that incident is that my friend who joined me to retrieve it had a visitor a few weeks later who had not heard about our adventure with the wheel. He just randomly shared a story about his last visit to Rocky, which was about 40 years ago when he was a teenager. He told of being in a bus with his youth group from the Midwest, and as they were driving over the top of Trail Ridge Road, the wheel broke off of their trailer and it rolled into Forest Canyon. It left them stranded on that narrow road and needing rescue. Could this have been that same wheel? I can't imagine that many other trailer axles have broken apart in that exact same spot. What a coincidence. Another hike that I really enjoyed was a 20-mile round-trip hike with my son to a more remote area for some sunset photography. It is one of my favorite areas of the park, and as always, it was stunningly beautiful. The water was flowing fast, and the flowers were beginning to appear at this high elevation. When I'm back in places like this that are so wild and beautiful, I just never want to leave. While I made many other hikes and even made a couple of videos of them, some of my favorite outings were actually ones where I went without my cameras and just enjoyed being in the wild. For me, it is the peace and silence of the mountains that I love the most. Simply being out in the mountains without anything else to worry about is what most refreshes me. Now, one of the things I've started doing these last couple of years is that I'm slowly climbing all of the named peaks in the park, both the officially named peaks and the unofficially named peaks. I've climbed about 114 of them so far, but still have almost 50 more to climb. I find that these climbs introduce me to new angles and views that I hadn't considered for photography before. I'll then go back when the light is right to try and make photos from these spots. This time, when the autumn arrived, I photographed the first frost, the changing tundra, glorious aspen leaves, the obligatory view of Long's Peak over Bear Lake, and the bugling elk. But then I was delighted to experience something different this year, the aurora borealis. That's a pretty rare treat, as it normally doesn't come this far south. I photographed the little chapel of St. Catherine of Siena on Highway 7 with northern lights above it. The colors in the aurora were simply unreal, and it made for quite an incredible scene. That was really a treat. But probably my favorite outing in Rocky during the autumn was to the top of a mountain to photograph a view that I'd never seen photographed before. This was another of those that I almost didn't make in time. I had to race like a madman to get there. You may remember my video about this outing. I arrived just in time and was treated to the most spectacular sunset. I was just overjoyed to photograph this stunning view with such wonderful light. You know, normally it takes me many trips to get the conditions that I'm dreaming of, but not this time. So this was another one of those outings where I found myself smiling the entire hike back. Then, as the autumn gave way to winter, I found myself photographing the stunning ice that forms on our lakes. The ice on our lakes can have these otherworldly views. Now this year, I put out about 35 videos on Rocky Mountain National Park covering topics such as what not to do, how to avoid the crowds, winter activities, family-friendly hikes, photo adventures, an interview with park staff, personal reflections on life in the mountains, etc. I've been trying a number of different things on this channel to try and keep it interesting. And I also try to find out what you're actually interested in. You know, this whole YouTube thing has been quite the learning experience. One of the things I didn't realize before I started putting out these videos is just how much work goes into them. I find that it generally takes me 2 or sometimes even 3 full days of work to produce a video. Some of these videos even take me a full week to produce when I've had to go back to locations again and again to get the footage I wanted. For all that work, I earn about $100 per month from YouTube ad revenue, which means I earn about $1 per hour when working on these videos. It's only those with tens and hundreds of thousands of views that are really making any money on this platform. For the rest of us, it has to be about other things. Now, one of the things I want to do is to help people fall in love with the natural world and with Rocky Mountain National Park and help them learn how they can care for it. I find that most people these days live in urban environments and simply don't know a great deal about the natural world or how to interact with it in a healthy way, and I'd love to help with that. I also want to help visitors have the best experience possible on their visit. I find that I meet so many people who only scratch the surface, spending their time at the visitor centers or shopping for t-shirts because they don't know about what else they can do here. I also continue to post on YouTube because I find this is a great platform to introduce visitors to my gallery, my prints, books, calendars, etc. I've been pleasantly surprised to see so many new people visiting my gallery as a result of YouTube. Well, during this coming year, I'm planning to provide more educational videos about the park, to create videos which help improve the visitor experiences and increase stewardship of the park, and most of all, videos which help visitors to fall in love with the natural world as I have. I really appreciate all of you who watch and who comment on these videos. Your comments are also encouraging. Thank you. I hope that you're finding value in these videos. Please let me know in the comments what ideas you have or what you most enjoyed from this last year on the channel. Thanks for watching, everyone. Wishing you all a wonderful 2025. To help you prepare for your visit to Rocky Mountain National Park, visit my website, rockymountainnationalpark.com. For hiking guides, calendars, coffee table books, and more, visit rockytrailpress.com. And when you arrive, be sure and stop by my gallery in downtown Estes Park. It's called Images of RMNP.